Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Season 6 of Stand Up and Stand Out, Parte y Destacate. I'm your hostess with the mostest, Nikki Green, and we're taking it back to the old school with our original guest interviews you have come to love. We spent the last 2 seasons learning more about the 2 books I launched this year, Chameleon Mindset and The Great Leadership Awakening. And now that I've come up for air from the writing and publishing process, I wanted to reach out to my network and share more of the great work others are doing. I hope you enjoy Season 6, and I look forward to hearing your feedback and comments on the fascinating topics we will cover with each of these new guests. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Season 6 of Stand Up and Stand Out. We have a wonderful new guest today. Leanne Marie Webster is the creator of Find Your Flow Weekend, True 90, No Regrets Formula, and host of the No Regrets, No Limits Forum. She is an attorney turned international keynote speaker, Moth Story Slam winner, and entrepreneur with 20 plus years experience in coaching, marketing, and business development in a range of industries. Her first national TV appearance was a contestant on MTV's Remote Control. Since then, her entrepreneurial insights have been featured on NBC, The Washington Post, Los Angeles Times, and dozens more. She is also an Ironman triathlon finisher. You see why we get along. And recently summited Mount Kilimanjaro. Leanne is creator and star of Fancy Meeting Me Here and her inspirational one-woman show. There we go. Say hi, Leanne.
Hi. So happy to be here.
Well, you've been up to so many things, and it wasn't that long ago that we chatted, but it seems like you've had a whirlwind of the last couple months. So why don't you share with the audience a little bit about like what you've been up to, what your focus is, and how you help people?
Sure. So I am all about how to live your life with no regrets. I've created this no regrets formula because what I realized is, I've been able to accomplish a lot of things in life. I've gone from like barely passing high school to top 20% of my law school class, from no theater background to having a one-woman show, from not running to finishing an Ironman triathlon. And people often were like, hey, how do you do that? How do you achieve all these things? How do you stay so busy? And what I realized is there's a formula that I'm following that I've been able to codify into the no regrets formula. And that's what helped me stay both connected and achieving things, and then also connected to what the next thing is and what I want to create next.
I love that. And it really does resonate with me because I've always said that it's just, we put so many obstacles in our way for achieving the things that we're interested in. And sometimes it just takes people having a little bit more structure to it to allow them to say, hey, maybe this is possible. So I can't wait to learn a little bit more about the formula and how you help people.
Where would you like me to start? Because I can go in a million different directions. So what would be most helpful for you and your audience? Because
we're about to get ready for planning for 2024, and there's so many exciting new things coming on. And another kind of similar thing that we're working on is you said you're going to have a retreat in January, 3-day retreat in Austin. So talk about a little bit about that experience, and are you excited to be back in person with folks?
I'm so excited to be back in person. I will start there. As a speaker and just, I think, a human who likes other humans, it's been so refreshing to be able to hug people and especially when you're speaking or facilitating or in front of a group, to hear them say, ooh, ah, or laugh, hopefully, at the joke, and just to feel that energy exchange, I think is so magical, and I will never, ever take it for granted. So I have that. The Find Your Flow weekend is really, it came about because I keep having conversations with women in particular who kind of feel like they're living Groundhog Day. They feel like every day is the same. And while there's a beauty to routine, I certainly have my own routine that helps me stay present and moving along. Yet sometimes it can just feel like you're living the same day over and over. And we often get stuck. We often feel like, okay, especially for women, again, we've invested in our career. We've invested in our relationship. We've invested in our family. If you have children, you've invested in your children. And there's not a lot on the plate after all that for you. And so the idea behind Find Your Flow is to, first of all, take those moments to take your life back for yourself and say, yeah, this is great. It's not like we're going to ignore the kids and the career and all that stuff, but it's like, how do I take something for me and tune back into what I really want to do so that in the midst of all these things, I make sure that I'm serving myself and taking care of myself. Because the bottom line is if you don't take care of yourself, nobody else will.
It's so true. And I think it's especially hard. We've gotten pulled in so many directions and we're supposed to just do it all, be it all. And I think that's a great balance that you're showing with people as well. It's like, I do have to pursue my own things to make sure that I'm not experiencing that Groundhog Day. It is really tough because that motivation just starts to dwindle if it's like, okay, and then the same thing and the same thing and the same thing. So it's really great. I love to see that. One of the focuses for this season is we're talking about community and how we're bringing people together. And I know I've seen you in lots of different communities here in the Chicagoland area. So maybe talk a little bit about, how community has helped you and any particular communities maybe that you're a part of that you really think are worthwhile.
Yeah, I love that concept of community. And in fact, one of the pillars of the No Regrets formula is crew, which, I like to think about is who's around you. And my shorthand way of thinking of it is who got you here might not get you there. Meaning that we really need to pay attention to who we have kind of in our circle. And, there may be people, friends or colleagues or whatever in the past that have helped you get to the point you're at today. And that's wonderful. And they may not be the same people who can help you get to the place that you want to go to. And it's okay. And again, this is one of those things that kind of happens by inertia, right? We often we kind of go see the same group of people or we have the same friends or we, have brunch with these people on Tuesday or whatever. And we don't step back sometimes and say, are these people really helping me progress? Now, whenever I talk about that, or even about the whole no regrets formula, somebody invariably will say, well, that sounds like a very selfish way to live your life. And it is. And that's okay. But here's the thing. I'm not saying only focus on you and your needs, only put yourself first, only look at whether these people serve you. Look at the whole thing and look at whether you can also serve them. But more importantly, it's not to the exclusion of others. It's just you first, right? It's like when we travel, we've all traveled. Oxygen mask comes down, put it on yourself before you put it on somebody else. That's all my platform really is about. So crew. So the way I like to think about crew is whether people fall into, and I have a whole exercise I go through clients with this on, where they are either enhancers or detractors. And enhancers are the people, if you think of yourself like a candle, enhancers are like guarding the flame of the candle. They make sure that, things don't happen to it. And when you go to them and you say like, hey, I'm thinking about going after a big client, changing my job, climbing Kilimanjaro, like doing an Ironman, like whatever, fill in the blank. Maybe getting, changing your relationship, divorcing, whatever. They are the ones who go, okay, all right, let's talk about that. Like, does that make sense? Why do you want to do that? What are you thinking? How can I help you? Detractors are the ones who are like, really? I don't think you want to do that. I don't know if you want to do that. Last time you tried that, you didn't finish, right? Like, they are the ones, if you're a candle, they're like snuffing out the flame. and they're not bad people. I mean, detractors are usually coming from a space of they want to protect you. They don't want to see you hurt. They don't want to see you try and fail. They usually have your best interests at heart, yet their view of the world may be different and it might not be one that helps you grow and expand. So pay attention to who's in your life. And then if you have detractors, which we all do in some form, then figure out if you can change your relationship with them or change what you talk about with them. Or if we have time, I have an example. My sister-in-law, who thankfully never listens to any of the podcasts that I do, I love her. She's a detractor. So she's great. She's not an entrepreneur. She doesn't, she lives her world is about being safe and knowing what's coming. She likes living Groundhog Day for the most part. That's cool. It's not me. And so one time I told her a business idea that I had and she laughed in my face. And, it sounds mean. It wasn't quite as mean but it's just that to her, it was absurd to when I already have a business, to try something else. And I realized in that moment, we're so different with how we view the world. I can't come to her with things like this. So what I do now is I don't tell her the ideas and the things, 'cause we all know as creative people and as entrepreneurs, it's like, you're always right, changing and moving. And so so what I do now is I say, hey, I did this keynote at this thing and it was great. And this woman came up and said she really loved my story. So I tell her things that have already happened that are successful so she can wrap her head around that than trying to tell her a forward thinking thing. And that's made the relationship a lot better because I'm not sitting here worried that she's going to laugh in my face about it.
Well, and it's so important. And this is the hard thing, right? Is there's a difference between, when people are really pulling you down because of their own issues and them just not understanding or having a fear of what you're trying to do. And especially when we're in these creative spaces, it's so incredibly difficult because you're putting yourself out there again and again and again to do these new things. It struck me when I started doing triathlons because, I was all excited and I thought it was the coolest thing. And even just running, I was like, oh my God. And then I did this and I got up at, 6 a.m. and then I did like 10 miles and, and it's like to anybody else that doesn't do that stuff, they're like, that just sounds like dumb. Like I slept in and I had a donut, right?
Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that?
Right. And it's really detracting because it's a tough thing to do mentally, physically, to keep putting yourself out there. Same thing as many other entrepreneurial, things that we're trying to do ourselves. And so I same thing. I really had to learn, okay, well, this is why I joined a triathlon club or a running club or something where those people are interested in that thing. And then you get actually stuck in the opposite loop of like, oh, we're going to do even crazy.
Well, I have to remind myself sometimes, especially have you done Ironman? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Which one did you do?
I've done ones in California.
Oh, cool. Very cool. And so to your point, right? Anyone who's in a triathlon club, or especially people who've done Ironman, like we have this kind of warped perception about what like normal and for a workout, right? Somewhat. And so it's interesting because I have to remember that like not everybody has done it. Cause for a while I was so entrenched in the training and things that then I would be going to people and saying like, yeah, I'm going to, I got like a 2-hour run tomorrow or whatever. And then I'm going to go grocery store. And they're like, what? Like what? Huh? What are you talking about? And I'm like, oh yeah. Well, they're like, didn't you do a long workout today? Yeah, well I did, but I got to do this and that. And then it's like, oh no, wait, like most of the world doesn't do these things. And so it's actually interesting and special. Like my coach for a while had to say, Leanne, include your Ironman story in your keynote. And I'm like, well, I've told that thing a million times. She's like, no, but it's a big deal. I'm like, yeah, to me, I know 25 people who've done Ironman, usually faster and more than me, right? Like, but it's like, no, the average person hasn't. And that's a big thing for them. So it's just an interesting perspective on our world. Yeah.
And it applies to so many things that we do. And this is why, again, I think that community aspect is so important. And it's okay for us to have multiple communities, for us to do different things. If you're a mom, maybe belonging into a parental community where you can also commiserate about the good, bad, and the difficult of raising your kids. Or, dads to have other men that maybe are in their professional organization. Like there's so many different aspects to our lives. And to be able to talk to those other people, I think where people struggle and they do get in that kind of difficult groundhog is they're also like trying to tell that same partner, at home, those same kids, those same things. And everyone has their own thing that they're interested in and that they're focused on. And you do need that time to focus on yourself to be able to do your own things. I think it makes us better when we go back to those situations because we've gotten our own little bit of time. We've gotten an ability to take care of ourselves. So I can see how beneficial this will be for many people.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's part of the no regrets formula also is commit. One of the pillars is, and that's committing to yourself first. And that's kind of making that promise to yourself that you're going to do what makes sense for you and for your world. Because what happens sometimes is we, especially when we're like setting goals or we're trying something new, we get super attached to the outcome or we get super attached to like, I want to, build whatever, do whatever, become whatever. And we get attached to that. And if we're attached to that, then sometimes we'll make decisions that aren't necessarily in our best interests. But if we can connect more to, I'm going to commit to what's right for me. And at this moment, it includes that. It may or may not include that in the future, but start going towards that. Then it gives you a little bit of a different barometer for achievement.
And I think that's important. And there's been some controversial stuff on TikTok lately, which is also new, whatever, it's social media, right? But I just feel, working so much with this next generation, and some of them, have now finished university coming out of the pandemic, and they're going into the workforce, and they're like, oh, this is what work is. And they're absolutely having that Groundhog Day. And they're like, oh, like I'm going to sit in traffic for an hour plus. Then I get to the office and I stare at a screen, no different than I was doing at home. Right. And then, I barely have 15 minutes to eat, maybe still in front of that computer. And then I go sit and wrestle traffic for another hour plus home. And I'm so tired by the time I get there. I don't want to do anything else. And I can barely cook. And I order Uber Eats. And then, your night's over. So maybe talk about, some of this self-care and how important it is, regardless of whether you're an entrepreneur or whether, you're pursuing your career elsewhere.
Yeah. I think the most important thing is to, I'm a big fan of having goals, right? Because I like, and kind of bigger goals which often get put off, right? We think like, oh, well, the holidays are coming, so I'm not going to try anything different. Or, in the spring or, after the winter or, whatever, and insert your thing. When I get a different job, when I make a little more money, when I feel like I have a little more energy, which can all be valid things. And what I find is if we don't have something that we're kind of striving for that's outside of our immediate, then we do get caught in that rut and it gets hard to get out of the cycle. So that's actually one of the reasons I started doing running and then triathlon, because the training got me out of my brain and more into my body, and it gave me different things to strive for. Now, nobody has to go do an Ironman. I'm not prescribing that for everyone. If you want to, rock on. Or Kilimanjaro, I did that at the end of last year. Like that was another cool thing to train for. Next year, I'm going to walk part of the El Camino, the Camino de Santiago. So I like physical goals. Now, not everybody likes physical goals. Maybe it could be discovering how to paint. Maybe it could be discovering how to dance. Maybe it could just be reading reading more books. Or, I talked to a client today who said one thing she's been really invested in is reading more classic literature. She really likes that. So instead of watching Netflix, she's reading the top, pulled from the list of the top 50 greatest books of all time. And so instead of reading a book around her profession, she's kind of taking that leisure time to go do that. So whatever floats your boat. I love comedy. I like going to comedy stores, comedy shows. I like watching comedy on a lot of things. It makes me laugh. So whatever it is for you, but find an interest or something. And then to really amp it up, I think attaching a goal of some sort to it makes you a little more invested, right? So it's not, I'm just going to read more books. I'm going to read these 10 books.
Well, and it's hard, especially when we have to do hard things or we have to do something that isn't really ideal. Like I had surgery back in 2015 and I was house-ridden for 8 weeks. It's like my pre-pandemic practice. And for me, to sit still for 8 weeks was crazy. And I was like, what am I going to do? And I thought I was going to read because I enjoy reading. And so I had this huge stack. And then I realized the medication and stuff, it was making me kind of woozy and then just too sleepy. And so I wasn't able to read. So instead, I don't actually usually watch a lot of TV and movies. I went through the top 100 AFI movies. And so again, it was just like classic movies. Maybe I'd seen a handful of them, maybe the more modern ones, but I hadn't seen a lot of the classics. So I started at 100 and I ordered them, because this was the days Netflix. A lot of these I had to still get on the disc on DVD because they didn't actually have everything on streaming. So, but it was great. It was really cool because then it kind of gave me something new to look at. It was always very different topics because it wasn't something I normally picked. And so, it got me through a difficult time, which, normally would have probably been a mental struggle to be kind of stuck in the house by myself like that.
Totally. The other thing I find that happens to us a lot is we get, and this is why I started doing the Find Your Flow work, is we get really caught up in judging ourselves and what we're doing. And we get caught up sometimes in the emotion of it. One thing I've seen culturally is that we have what I would call toxic positivity, which tells us that, you just look at the positive side, and focus on what you want, not on what you don't like. And while I believe all of those things are true, and I believe there's value in all of that, I also believe that sometimes the dark side of it, and I know I experienced this, was that when a negative emotion would come up, anger, frustration, resentment, I would push it to the side and say, nope, nope, nope. I need to make myself feel better and just focus on these things over here. And I find that gets us also in this weird trap, because if we're not recognizing and acknowledging our feeling, yeah, you can shove them away, but they're going to come back usually in a much more, firestorm way, or they'll cause illness. They'll cause, pain. They cause, dis-ease in our body. And so part of, I believe, finding your flow is also recognizing those emotions and actually feeling them and looking at what's behind them. Why do I feel envious of this person? It's not because they're a bit. It might be, by the way, it might be a bit, but usually it's because with like envy or jealousy, usually it's because there's something that they have that I want. And so it's like I'm judging them, and if you can start to like really interpret your feelings and what's going on and why you're feeling the things that you're feeling and kind of get behind it. And I have a whole process that I work through, that I help clients work through, that can be super enlightening. And more importantly, you can start to process through things a lot more quickly than I ever did before. Yeah.
So important. I had a boss, one of my very first jobs, and, he used to tell me when people come in the morning and they're like, oh, how are you doing? The answer should always be, I'm great. I'm terrific. And, he wanted me to do this toxic positivity thing. And at the time I was finishing my MBA, I was planning my wedding. Like I had 1,000 things going on, and this job it just really wasn't doing it for me. And so, to do that every day was really, really crushing me. And pretty much within a year, I left that job. And so now I kind of turn it around a little bit. And instead of necessarily asking how people are doing, I just try to give them the energy I'm feeling. And I just say, good morning, good to see you today. Or, just something that's not necessarily a question where they have to respond and feel that pressure to like be something they may not be, but just give them something that you're feeling in the moment, right?
Totally. I love it. I love it. And on the other side of that too, I think it's very important to even just listen to yourself with what you're saying, right? Because sometimes we get in these habitual patterns, this Groundhog Day kind of thing of answering the, how are you doing? Oh, I'm great. You say it like that. Or or I'm really tired. I'm really tired. I'm not feeling very well. I'm I don't know. I'm annoyed. I don't know. And it's like, if you take these things on, then that can insidiously start to really affect how your day turns out. It might be true for that moment, but sometimes we take it on and it becomes true for like the entire day. And that's where we want to be really mindful as well.
Well, time's almost up. And before we go, I did want to talk about the potato. We just had Halloween yesterday, and it snowed here in Chicago because why not? And so we trudged around in the snow because the little one was committed to definitely getting some candy. But I saw your post about the potato, so I would love for you to kind of end on a happy note and tell us a little bit about it.
I stole this from some other post that came through my feed, but I saw the idea is you have this basket of Halloween candy and you put a potato in there, and you would think like no one's going to take the potato. But the truth is the kids freaking love the potato. And so like 50% of the time we would offer them the whole basket with a potato and say, take what you want. 50% of the time the kid would be like, hey, can I have the potato? Like, or they'd be like, oh yeah. They would always ask, which I think it's funny because they didn't ask they would just grab for everything else, but they'd ask if they could take the potato, which I think is hilarious. Like it was so special. And then like one kid was like, Mom, we can make French fries. Like, so it's like, I feel like it spurned a little creativity, which I love. I did have a couple, like one girl was like, what's this? Like, what's side? But I just thought it was so interesting. Like it's something abnormal, right? It's something you don't normally see. And I think, amongst the Snickers and the Reese's and Twix bars, it was like a refreshing change. And what I loved was the enthusiasm with which the kid would sometimes be I think more often than I expected would be like, oh my God, yeah, I totally love the potato. And they talked about it. Like it was so cool.
We're going to start a new trend. So Halloween 2024, we're going to give out potatoes and who knows what else. We'll get really creative. Start to give out some more healthy treats. It might be a little better for us in the end.
I mean, look, it's gluten-free, it's like, no peanuts, none of the allergies. Like it's really not a bad choice when you think about it.
Well, it's been a joy having you on the show and learning a little bit more about, what you're up to and the things you've done. If you guys are interested in learning more about the retreat in Austin in January or anything else, Leanne, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Best way is just go to my website, which is my whole name, LeanneMarieWebster.com.
Terrific. We'll drop it in the show notes so that folks can grab it there. Well, thank you guys all for joining us today. I hope you guys loved this episode. I hope you guys are channeling your inner potato today and finding the way to balance and to flow. Thanks everyone for joining us today for another episode of Stand Up and Stand Out. You know you can catch us where all the cool kids hang out that do podcasts on all the major platforms. And if you want to connect with Nikki directly, you can get a hold of me on my personal site, thenikkigreen360.com. There you can check out my website, you can see any of my new books, you can learn more about this podcast, and follow us on social. Can't wait to hear from you, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye.